Hello, hello. I am Karen Jean-François, and this is the Women in Data podcast. A podcast where every other week I interview some of the most inspiring women working in data. They discuss how data is used in various industries, share their knowledge and experience in the field, and equip you with tips to help you overcome challenges on your career and feel great. Let's get straight to it. Welcome to another episode of the Women in Data podcast. And today we are talking about a very important topic, and that's around ensuring your work adds value, but also showing the value of your work. And for that, I am joined by the incredible Dr. Nadia Zaheer, who is Group Head of Data Science and AI at Vanquish Banking Group. And why I think this episode is so important is that, we've all seen, there are two facets of it, right? So we've all seen all these numbers around 85% of data science projects do not add value, or we're unable to prove the value of them. But we've also all been struggling to show, okay, this is what I'm adding to the table. This is what my work have been doing in the last few months, years, so that we can potentially get promoted later. And I think it's something we don't talk enough about. So Nadia, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast to talk about that and help us get a bit better at it.
Thank you for having me, Karen. It's an honor to be here and talking about such an important subject, because we tend to get lost in, we're just doing data science. And what is the science of data if it's not adding value, right? You're solving business problems or solving problems. So it's just using data to solve those problems and taking those decisions that really mean something for the business. Yeah, so delighted to be here and talk about my experiences and taking it from there.
Absolutely. And I can't wait to hear about this. But before we get into today's topic, can I invite you to introduce yourself?
By degree, I'm a computer systems engineer. By profession, a data scientist. At heart, a consultant, because I like solving problems outside in. And a mother, and that translates into my leadership style. Been in the industry for about 18 years, back when data science was not even a buzzword. The first project started out as a telco engineer, doing business intelligence and customer 360 degree, trying to save operational costs for a telco. And people didn't want to share data. So with the help of two software engineers, we built a solution that IBMs and Oracles of the world didn't have off the shelf. And that got later deployed into other subsidiaries, but it ended up saving 32 million pounds worth of over 3 years worth of cost. Now, people didn't want to share data in that time. So that's a question I took into my PhD and tried to answer that. And that's what I do now. I try to answer the question. I try to bring value out of data by understanding who the customers are. How do they bring value to the organization? How do we cross-sell, upsell to them? How do we throw them the right marketing campaigns and measure the result of that? How do we test and try new things? While solving that question of why people don't share data, it's more of a quantitative numbers and text was how I solved for it. I was teaching a class of MBA on data analytics, and I was telling them data is the new oil and marketing is no longer an art, it's a science. And it clicked to me that I am the data scientist. 50% of the data scientists are PhDs. So it's like, it just, when you have those light bulb moments, I joined IBM. And so from there on, I'm cross-industry, from selling data strategy to banks to implementing, building teams. That's what I enjoy doing. Open banking is what I did after that. My superpower is NLP, transaction banking, financial transactional data, understand where people are spending. Had my own startup at one point where I really wanted to build an AI data trust. And this is around COVID time, team of developers. And, I did that. And then I joined another open banking startup for MENA region called LeanTech, and built out a similar solution that I was doing in the previous startup. And that ended up with Sequoia-backed investors, 33 million pounds within like 8-9 months of building out that solution. So building products and using AI. And then I'm heading the data science, machine learning, and AI and Gen AI function at Vanquish Banking Group. Yes, I have to say all of those. That's how you build the brand that we will soon be talking about. because it was just data science in my title, and I sneaked in the machine learning, I sneaked in the AI, and I sneaked in Gen AI.
You have to make it like reflective of what it is that you're doing, don't you?
Yes. And then I have added a tagline in my signature as well, saying customer-led machine learning ops, AI ops journey. So
I
that's
love
how we
that.
actually, taking Vanquish on his machine learning AI ops, ML ops, AI ops, customer-led journey. So rather than just saying what you do in your title, these are small moments. I know conversation flowed from rather than just that part of that introduction, to this signature part, but that's how you start showing what you're doing, how you're talking about your work.
You introduce yourself by sharing numbers. This is how much money we saved. This is how much money we generated. And it really makes me feel like we chose the exact topic to talk about on the podcast together, because I love that. I think data analytics teams and I'm talking data analytics because that's where I sit, but data science, data analytics teams, what happens to us is we tend to sit cross-functionally in businesses, and we have people coming with questions, people coming with requests, and we have to prioritize that. And very often, I think I've been in teams that will try to do all the work that's coming their way. I've been in teams trying to prioritize, but how can a team ensure that the work they're doing is the one that adds the most value to the business, the one that's the most valuable for them to look at right now?
Time is money, right? And in this case, whatever you're working on, data science is not a research project. You're here to add value, to understand customers and then predict some behavior, or there's always work coming in. For the work coming in, I always, there's a backlog, right? There's a shopping list of things that we can do, we want to solve for, because there are some things like Gen AI that excites us. But so what is something my manager used to say. And so what is a very good answer. Like, you've done all of this. So what? Why should I care? And in business school, the so what is if the business is not growing, like if you're not, profit equals revenue minus cost, right? If you're not growing revenue and if you're not reducing cost, you cannot grow as a business. So whatever decisions you're taking should be hitting these basic equation. I used to say, like, if you forget everything from your business studies, every business operates on this equation and another equation, which is y is equals to mx plus c, but we'll talk about that later. That is everywhere. Trust me, this is the basics of data science. You start in high school, but it's the same principles of regression that are used in machine learning. Back to the prioritization part. Now, while even setting up strategy or while even thinking about what do you want to do in that business, you can look at all the use cases. First, you follow a use case by use case approach, which is a shopping list. I can do this. I can do this. Put them on a sticky note, put them on an Excel sheet, put them on a whichever way you like, put them on a Jira ticket, put them on anywhere, write them down. And then I have this evaluation matrix, which is impact versus effort. So what is the impact? And impact is always measured in time, money, effort, time, money in this case. So what area are you saving cost? Are you growing? Is it a grow business case or a saving business case? And what is the effort that you're going to take? For example, in this case, you could build project X or build project Y or start doing this. But what is the effort? So effort could be low, medium, high. And impact could be low, medium, high. If you don't know, that's okay, to a bit of a t-shirt sizing exercise and pick the ones which are high on impact and low on effort and show them as quick wins, because those low on effort are literally low hanging fruit. Build those, showcase the value. Like, I did this, now I need X amount, or now I need this person, or now I need this if you want to take this further, and scale it up from there. So that's how I usually manage the backlog. And some of the items you realize are like high ticket items. Those you pick first. And again, divide them into chunks, divide them into a POC end to end, show the value, prove the worth, and then move on to the next one and the next one and the next one.
Yeah, I totally agree. So the impact versus effort metrics has been something that has been a life-saving tool for me, I have to say. But something that you were talking about, so when you said time is money, this is so important, because very often, so we're thinking how much effort, but unless you're in consulting and then obviously you're charging clients by the day, and then that forces you to do that. But working in smaller data teams, so if you have a team of 6 or something like that, for example, very often they will go and do the work. So they will know maybe what the value is, but not think about the time you're spending on it and then how that impact the return on investment. So spending a lot of time, as you said, doing something that is not adding more, well, if the cost is not matching the revenue, then in the end you get project that was not really worth doing in the end.
True. Very true. So as team members, what's stopping you from asking that question? I'm a person who likes knowing, where do I fit in as a cog of the machine? Where do I fit? Like, so everybody should be asking that question. Where do I fit in the bigger picture? How is this adding value? As a data scientist, it's very important to understand each data science project. What is it trying to predict? What part of the needle are you trying to move? And is it hitting the needle or not? Because whatever you've built, if it's not moving the needle, for example, we are offering forbearance solutions based on the type of customer, based on each customer situation. How do you know that this solution is working? Are you keeping track of the right metrics, right? Like, are you measuring each agent is doing that, or is the customer following on their promises? So you have these KPIs attached to it. And if those KPIs are not ultimately improving operational costs, or in this case, because I'm taking the example of banking, impairments. So why do you have this recommender? It's not working. It's not improving things. So then you retrain your model. There's something that it gives you answers into why it's not hitting the needle. Maybe you didn't solve it that way. So always ask question, how does it work? How will we test it? What is the success criteria? Where does it fit in the business? What value will it bring in? Usually it's hard to assign value. So if not, try to make assumptions and quantify it in some t-shirt size. Every problem's different. It might not be applicable, but talk to stakeholders and find out, like, if I do this, what would you do? How would you measure? Like, if I can predict this, how would it help the business? And really have good stakeholder management, because you're helping them decide, take decisions. It's data-driven decision making, right? And when I say data-driven, it means some predictions, some insights. How are they adding value to the business? And follow through with what their decisions have been, and test, like, this worked, but this didn't. Because only that way you can become smarter on doing data science.
Yeah. And you mentioned the t-shirt size. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
So t-shirts, small, medium, large, right? So that's, or low, medium, high, or red, amber, green, different ways of putting things in different buckets, right? Sizes. So this is low, medium, high, depending on which company and which circumstances, but low could be measured in sprints, 1 to 2 sprints, depending on which company. In the startup world, we were rolling out products every 3 weeks. AI premium products. But in a bigger organization, might not be the case. It might take you 6 weeks. It might take you 3 months, depending on which problem you're solving for. So whatever low means in your organization, it's quick and easy. I can do this. And then medium is months. Again, relative scale, 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, depending on, give it some sort of quantification so that you can see, this is a lot of effort. It'll take me 10 months to do this, but it'll take me 1 month to do this. And it's easy. I can talk to this, because you're picking up a problem that's easier to solve. It's easier to prove the worth with the stakeholder. And a little bit of project management is also required, because you want to follow through. You cannot just keep doing what you're doing. It's not a research project. You don't have all your life to spend on it. You only have limited amount of time, and you also have a life, right, outside of work. So how I tend to lose track of time when I'm coding at night. So when you're doing something you love, that happens too. But keep track of how many sprints did it take you to do this, and can you reduce that next time? Because that's all part of design thinking, iterativeness. Like, you solve the problem first time, how would you make it better the next time? What are the learnings, and document those learnings as well.
Yeah. I don't know if you have to deal with fundamental problems. So, for example, if you have problems with the data that you have to fix the quality or things like that. So I think the business won't necessarily see the value from that straight away, because it's not something immediate that they see on their customer, but that also needs to be prioritized. So do you take a similar approach with these type of projects?
Yes. In fact, so as a data science, machine learning, and an AI team, I am supposed to be building predictive models. But as part of the North Star team recently, we had to define who the customers are, what value do they bring to the organization, what is the target addressable market, how do we address their needs. And that is something you can't see the benefit immediately, right? Like, oh, why should I be doing this? But this is the most important part of your strategy, right? If the strategy is right from the top, it's easier to implement that. And then, of course, it's like questioning the value of strategy, of things, inherent things. And this is another thing that I've now started realizing. People who do not understand that data is so important for decision making are maybe not the right companies, or who do not understand the benefits out of it are maybe not the right companies for you. So I've been educating and educating people what data science means and how it adds value. Sometimes projects fail. We require a lot of experimentation. How is it different from software engineering? Why do we follow a different method? But like now, if the organization doesn't understand it, it's not the right organization for you, because people need to know that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked quite a bit about, working on work that adds value and then making sure we know how to prioritize. So you gave us loads of tips with the t-shirt size, which I quite like, with the impact versus effort, and also making sure that you sometimes, if you need to demonstrate value really quickly, go after the low hanging fruit. But another part of showing value is really around proving the value of your work. So I'm Karen. I've been working in the organization for a year, a couple of years now. I know this was a big sorry. I know I started saying I'm Karen trying to be in the personage straight away, but I'm just realizing I have the best example of failing to show the value of your work in my early careers, where I was working, providing really good quality work. Everybody was saying, I don't question the work that you give me, but then I could not progress in my career. So I was passed for promotion. If there was a big project that people were bringing on, I was not the one that was put on these kind of projects. And I know it's because I was struggling to show the value of my work. So yes, people would know that it was good quality, but showing the value and showing what I was capable of was very difficult. I was very much hiding behind my screen, not talking too much. And I had to do a lot of work to change this situation. But I would love to know how you do things. What are your best tips to show for one to show the value of their work?
It's not just you. Most people have this nervousness around playback, or like show and tell, and talking about their own work. But something I learned at IBM, one leader said, it's like 20% of the work and then 80% of the effort should go into celebrating and shouting out from the rooftops about it. So, and that really stuck, because yes, you did something, but did you shout out about it? If you don't shout out about it, people wouldn't know. IBM was a big organization. So you actually had to talk about it. And so where did you go to talk about it? Did you put it in the blog? Did you put it on LinkedIn? I refrain from LinkedIn, but it used to be company intranet. Did you write some learnings about it? Did you go on a forum to talk about it and showcase? And did you do a webinar? Did you do were you a guest speaker at somebody else's function or another business and talk about it? So there's so many avenues that you get. Then there was a point where I would make my team talk about their weekly playbacks, and they would have to do that by force. And I still do that with some of my team members, because one thing I've experienced with engineers, especially, they're introverts. They would rather hide behind they would hide behind a screen or not talk about it because we feel shy. Like, why do we want to blow our own trumpet, right? So we don't want to do that. It's against human nature, but it's important, because data science, as much as it has matured, people still don't understand how it adds value. So you have to talk about it. You have to show which problem you solved using this data. So if you approach it with that, that helps in talking about it, and always show the impact. And then, people become curious, because as soon as you talk about time saving or money or in those numbers, because that's executive thinking. Why are you doing this? So what? As soon as you show the so what, you've gathered their attention. Oh, how did you do it? And then talk about it in English. People become too technical. People spend ages and then try to crack a joke in the middle. People or something, like show enthusiasm. Like, I don't know, like share the insights. What did you learn? Can people learn from it too?
Yeah, and I love that because so there are two things here. So we're talking about your work so that people will see the value that you bring, but there is also the educational part. So what you said about data science having evolved, but people still need to understand what it is, what value it brings. And if we're not talking about our work, then they're not going to know. So we talk a lot about data literacy and people going on data literacy course. But then the best way for us to help the business to understand data is from us talking about their data. And that's how they're going to be able to get it. I love that.
But find examples and know those examples by heart. For example, we recently analyzed call center data. And now building a report, because I'm taking Vanquist on its Gen AI reporting, like we're setting up that part of the business. Call center data, there is a very nice compliment where the customer said, you saved my day and it's a big, massive weight off my shoulder. And the context of that call was the customer call missed a payment and then the agent helped set up those payments and the customer didn't even know that the direct debit was not in place. So, and then, these comments and then know these stories by heart so you can talk about them. Find a moment with anybody who's walking, hey, you want to see this? And it's very interesting what we found, how customers are praising our agents, how we are showing, talk about it in English, in business terms rather than in accuracy terms. And yes, when you do need to speak to, know your audience.
Yeah. I know your audience, definitely. And who does not want to know what the customers have been saying or have been doing? And we talked a bit about, engineers being very comfortable sitting behind their screen. That was me 7 years ago as well. And, having to deal with, I guess, imposter syndrome. Is that something you've faced? And if you have, can you tell us how you overcome these things?
A talk about imposter syndrome, another podcast back in like a few years ago. I don't think it ever goes away. It's how you've been raised, right? It's like no matter what you do, you feel like a fraud because you feel like you're not good enough. And for some of us, it could be a traumatic past. It could be the social conditioning that we've been raised. It could be a cultural difference. It could be so many different number of factors. So all my life, I would gather accolades to see like, oh, now I've gotten this. Maybe now I'm good enough. I've done this. Maybe now I'm good enough. All you're trying to do is prove to yourself that you're worthy. And so it's a work in progress. We're all work in progress, right? So the answer to that is learning. So I'm always constantly learning, reading books, trying to go on trainings, trying to understand, okay, how can I learn this? How can I be? But I have learned one thing, no matter how much I know, I won't know everything. So wisest is she who knows she knows nothing. So there's always bigger, better problems that you've never solved before. But if you have the right problem solving mindset, you can do that. But every time, yes, there is a freaky moment, like maybe I'm not good enough to do that. And there are triggers and emotional responses that you might get that, oh my God, don't let them. Self-soothe yourself. Take a moment, tell yourself how awesome you are. And this is going on to all the women out there. Keep reminding yourselves that you are doing so much. And yet this is you being self-critical too much. So give yourself some kindness. And keep learning because learning never stops. We're always learning and evolving and change is constant. Change is the only constant we know.
Yeah, I love that. And I can feel the kindness. I'm like, yes, Karen, some kindness to yourself. That wouldn't hurt.
Women are too self-critical. It's not, something I've noticed lately a lot. We hold ourselves to a higher criteria and then we judge against it. And then we're like, oh, we didn't do enough. We were not perfect. Nobody is perfect. Be okay with that.
Yeah, I think we're not making it easy the society in general is not making it easy, right? So now we're trying to change the social norms and then the role models, well, not always the role models, but people who are visible out there, they do so much and we keep comparing ourselves with super women who are almost like, how do you even do that? So I feel like sometimes, looking up a bit too far in terms of who we look up to can be quite damaging. So I know for me, one of the way I managed to solve the imposter syndrome, looking up to people who are accessible. So, and to me, it's very easy through the podcast because I talk to so many amazing women and I'm thinking, okay, I can do that. They're doing this and it's human. It does not feel like unachievable and it does not feel like I'm holding myself to extraordinary anymore. While before I was thinking, oh, look at this person who's done this and this and this. And I'm never going to meet this person in my whole life because they're too high up. So now I'm thinking, okay, someone I can go 2 steps ahead of me. I can get that. And then I just look 2 steps ahead, and then it helps this way. But yeah.
But I think the responsibility lies on us as women leaders as well, right? Like if we are not sharing our vulnerabilities, if we're not talking about imposter syndrome, showing that it's okay. Me too, right now, here. Like I had a breakdown yesterday for an emotional reaction for something. But thinking about it and talking about it, and that's okay because I thought that this is something that I should be perfect at, but I was not. And I was self-critical about it. But as soon as you realize that this is the mindset you're having, these are the thoughts, practice mindfulness, practice meditation. That helps you really. Another one of my mentors and leaders says, you're the mother and the child within you. So be the mother, be your own, when the child in you feels like, oh my God, I can't do this. I'm not perfect or I'm a fraud. The mother in you needs to soothe that child. So, and that's okay. We all are humans. We all make mistakes. We're not never going to be perfect. There's always going to be something we don't know, but that's okay.
Thank you so much for sharing that and for being vulnerable on the podcast. To close the episode, I would love to know what you're currently learning or are interested in learning.
So the current problem that we're trying to solve at Vanquish Banking Group is using large language models in the most secure, scalable with guardrails because we are dealing with financial data set people, right? So we have to follow, and we are a regulated industry. So how do we use Gen AI or large language models to solve the problems, and how do we save costs? That means using an offline model perhaps, and then productionizing it, putting it in a container. And it's more of a technical thing that I want to solve for, because once we have that scale, I can build 5-10 different apps around it, and the rest of the organization can start using it in the hands. It's like giving GPT in the hands of the rest of them so they can improve their productivity.
I love that. Thank you so much, Nadia, for joining me on the podcast. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you for having me, Karen.
Thank you for listening to the Women in Data podcast. We will be back in a couple of weeks with a new guest. Until then, if you have 2 minutes, it would be great if you could leave us a rating or a review, as it helps not only to make the podcast more visible, but also to enhance the content. If you don't want to miss the next episode, follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We are also on LinkedIn. And if you wish to, you can even register to the community for free. All you have to do is head to womenindata.co.uk. Have a great day.